Welcome to the Health Headliner podcast by Tudu Digital. Our content is informational only and not medical advice. Please consult your provider. Now, let's dive into today's headlines.
All right, so get this. Today we are diving into a medical mystery that honestly has like the most satisfying ending.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking families, we're talking rare diseases, the whole thing.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So it's called COPA syndrome. It's genetic and it can attack the lungs, the joints, even the kidneys. It's rough.
Yeah, I've heard of COPA syndrome, but it's super rare, right?
It is.
So what's the mystery part?
Well, it doesn't affect everyone who has the gene. Like some people in a family can be totally fine.
Oh, wow. That is a head scratcher. That's got to be tough for families dealing with it, not knowing who's going to get sick.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. We're looking at this article from Medical Express, came out just a couple days ago, February 27th.
Oh, very recent.
And it's reporting on some brand new research that was just published in the Journal of Experimental Medicine.
So cutting edge stuff. Okay, so what did they find?
Well, they might have found the key to predicting who gets sick and who doesn't. And get this, potentially even protecting those who are vulnerable.
Hold on. Are we talking about a cure for COPA syndrome?
It could be, but it's even bigger than that. It's about understanding how our genes can protect us from disease, period.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that has implications way beyond just this one rare disease, right?
Absolutely. But to get there, we got to start with this one family. Two sisters, Latasha and Christina. They were diagnosed with COPA syndrome when they were just kids.
Oh, man, that's heartbreaking. So how are they doing now?
Well, their story is pretty incredible. Their mom, Betty, is a total rock star. She became their champion, driving them back and forth 4 hours each way.
4 hours?
From their home in Oakdale, California, all the way to UCSF for treatment.
Wow. That's dedication right there. I mean, 4 hours each way, that's a whole day trip.
Every time. But it shows you how serious this disease is.
For sure. And the toll it takes on families, not just physically, but emotionally too.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is where it gets interesting. It was at UCSF where they met Dr. Anthony Shum.
Okay.
He's a pulmonologist, and he first met Latasha back in 2011. She came into the ER with some really serious lung hemorrhaging.
Oh, wow. So he saw firsthand how bad this disease could be.
Yeah, he saw how much it was affecting their lives, and he became determined to find out why.
So he wasn't just treating their symptoms, he was trying to solve the puzzle of why this was happening to them.
Exactly. He became their primary pulmonologist, but he also started investigating the genetic roots of COPA syndrome.
So he was like a medical detective trying to track down the cause.
Pretty much. He worked with researchers from Baylor College of Medicine, Texas Children's Hospital, and after years of research, they actually identified the cause.
Okay, so what was it? What did they find?
In 2015, they pinpointed a mutation in the COPA gene.
So that's the culprit, the COPA gene.
Right.
But here's the thing. If everyone with this mutation is vulnerable, why weren't all the family members getting sick? That's what we were talking about earlier.
Right. It's like a piece of the puzzle was still missing.
Yeah. Like why are some people protected and others aren't?
So turns out the COPA gene, it regulates the body's immune system. And it does that by interacting with another gene.
Oh, another gene. Okay.
It's called STING.
STING. All right. So what does this S-STING gene do? Is it like a defense mechanism?
Yeah, you can think of it like that. Like it's a sensor that detects threats, viruses, bacteria, that kind of thing.
So when it senses danger, it triggers the immune system to fight back. That makes sense.
But in people with COPA syndrome, the mutated COPA gene, it messes with STING.
Okay. Messes with it how?
Basically, it makes S-STING go haywire. It's constantly sending out these alarm signals, even when there's no real threat.
Oh, so it's like a car alarm that just keeps going off for no reason. It's super annoying, probably not very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, it's actually harmful. All this constant inflammation, it damages the lungs, the kidneys, the joints. That's why people with COPA syndrome have such a wide range of symptoms.
It's like their own immune system is attacking their body. That's wild. But what about those family members who had the mutation but didn't get sick? What was protecting them?
That's where the real breakthrough comes in. It turns out some people, they carry a variant of the STING gene. It's called HAQ-STING. And this variant, it acts like a shield.
A shield. So it protects them from the effects of the COPA mutation.
Yep. It's like a genetic superpower.
Wait. So you're saying that over a third of the population could be walking around with this this genetic shield that makes them immune to COPA syndrome.
That's what the research suggests.
That's incredible. So how do they figure that out?
Well, Dr. Shum and his team, they studied 26 people with COPA syndrome and 9 of their healthy relatives, including Latasha and Christina and their mom, Betty.
What do they find?
Every single one of the healthy relatives carried the HQ-STING variant.
Wow, and none of the COPA syndrome patients did.
None of them.
That's pretty compelling evidence. But how do we know for sure that HAQ-STING is the reason they're healthy? I mean, couldn't there be other factors at play?
Well, to test that, they took it to the lab. They took lung cells from a COPA syndrome patient,
Okay.
and they added HQ-STING.
So they basically gave those cells the genetic shield. What happened?
It was amazing. It was like the cells went back to normal. Their immune balance was restored. It was as if the COPA mutation never happened.
Wow. So it's like a reset button for the immune system. That's groundbreaking stuff. This HQ-STING variant, it really is like a genetic guardian angel.
It is. And you know what's even more exciting? This could have implications for all sorts of autoimmune diseases.
Yeah, like where the immune system goes rogue and attacks the body.
Exactly. We could be looking at a whole new way to treat these kinds of conditions. But we've only just scratched the surface. We need to dive deeper into what this means for the future of COPA syndrome and really the future of medicine.
Yeah, for sure. This is just the beginning. I'm really interested to hear more about what Dr. Shum and his team are doing. This is really exciting.
Well, stay tuned because we're going to do exactly that. It's crazy to think, right? Like this HAQ-STING thing was just there all along and no one knew. It's like a secret weapon.
It really is. It makes you wonder, like, how many other protective genes are out there just waiting to be discovered?
Oh, tons, I bet.
Yeah, like little genetic guardian angels.
Yeah.
Shielding us from who knows what.
But how would we even find them?
Well, scientists are already on it. They're looking through these massive genetic databases, comparing the DNA of healthy people to those with different diseases, trying to find those tiny but crucial differences.
Oh, wow. That's like searching for a needle in a haystack.
It is. But the stakes are high. If we can find those needles, it could change everything.
So what you're saying is that our DNA isn't just a blueprint for a disease. It's also a roadmap to resilience.
Exactly. Imagine, a future where we can screen for these protective genes early on.
Whoa, like when you're born.
Yeah, exactly. Or even before. We could identify people who are naturally resistant to certain diseases.
That's wild, like a personalized health forecast based on your genes.
Yeah, think about it. You could know which diseases you're most likely to avoid and focus on those where you might need extra support.
And maybe even develop treatments that mimic those protective genes, right?
Exactly. Like a synthetic shield for those who don't have the natural protection.
But wouldn't we need to sequence everyone's entire genome to do that? That's got to be expensive.
Well, yeah, it could be. But for now, this research gives us specific targets to look for, like HAQ-STINGing. Imagine you're a doctor and you have a patient with the COPA mutation. Wouldn't you want to know if they also have HAQ-STINGing?
Totally. It would completely change how you treat them.
Right. Like if you know their body has a secret weapon, you might not need to use those really aggressive treatments.
That's incredible.
For those who don't have HAQ-STING, there's gene therapy. Imagine being able to give them that missing shield.
Wait, hold on. Are we really talking about like manipulating genes here?
We are. It's still early days, but Dr. Shum and his team are already exploring different methods, like delivering HAQ-STING directly to the airways through an aerosol.
So instead of like a lifetime of meds and treatments, people with COPA syndrome could get a one-time gene therapy and it would be cured.
Potentially, yeah. It's mind-blowing to think about.
It is. And this could work for other autoimmune diseases too, right?
Absolutely. Things like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, even multiple sclerosis. We could be on the verge of a revolution in how we treat these conditions.
Okay, so this is all very exciting, but surely there are some challenges. Like gene therapy is still pretty new, right? There have got to be some risks.
Of course, of course. One of the biggest challenges is making sure these therapies are safe and effective. We don't want to introduce new genes into the body and have unintended consequences. The immune system is incredibly complex.
Right. Even a small change could mess things up.
Exactly. So we need to be really careful and do a lot of testing to make sure these therapies do more good than harm.
And what about the ethical side of things? Like if we can identify these protective genes before birth, do we have the right to to change someone's genes before they're even born.
Yeah, that's a big one. You know, as we learn more about the human genome, we're going to face more and more ethical dilemmas. It's a conversation that we as a society need to have.
It's a lot to take in for sure.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting. You know, we're entering a new era of medicine, one that's full of promise, but also some really tough questions.
It's almost like science fiction, but it's happening right now.
It is, and
Yep.
and the possibilities are almost endless. It's a pretty amazing time to be alive.
Yeah, it really is. But let's bring it back to the people living with COPA syndrome right now. What are the next steps in making these treatments a reality?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about this huge shift in thinking, you know, from finding disease-causing genes to actually looking for ones that protect us. But what does all this mean for the average person? Should we all be like running out to get our genes sequenced?
Well, I wouldn't say running out just yet. Widespread genetic sequencing for everyone is still a ways off, but this research is a game changer. The fact that HAQ-STING was like hiding in plain sight this whole time, protecting people without anyone knowing why, it's incredible.
Yeah, it really makes you think, like, what other genetic guardian angels are out there just waiting to be discovered?
Right, and that's exactly where research is headed now. Scientists are already looking through these huge genetic databases,
Yeah.
comparing the DNA of healthy people to people with different conditions, trying to find those subtle genetic differences. That's got to be a tough job, right? Like looking
Yeah.
for a needle in a haystack.
Oh, it definitely is. But, you know, the potential payoff is huge. If we find those needles, it could change everything.
So the tools are getting better, right? Like all this AI and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Artificial intelligence and machine learning are becoming super powerful. They can help researchers analyze tons of data and spot patterns that humans might miss.
So as technology gets better, we'll be able to unlock even more of these secrets hidden in our DNA.
Exactly. And who knows what we'll find. But you know, let's bring it back to COPA syndrome for a second. What are the next steps in actually making these treatments a reality for people living with the disease right now?
Yeah, good point. What's the timeline looking like?
Well, the most immediate focus is on developing those gene therapies, making sure they're safe and effective. And Dr. Shim and his team, they're already working on that. But it's a long process. They're trying different ways to deliver the HAQ-STING gene, figuring out the right dosage. And, of course, you know, making sure it's safe.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, right? Like pushing
Oh.
the boundaries of science, but also making sure you don't accidentally cause more harm than good.
Exactly. And then there are the ethical considerations. You know, as these therapies get closer to clinical trials, things like who should have access to them, how do we prevent genetic discrimination, those kinds of questions, they're going to become even more important.
Yeah, those are big questions for society as a whole, right? It's not just about the science anymore.
Right. It's about how we use that science responsibly. But, you know, even with all those challenges, it's hard not to feel hopeful, especially for the families that have been battling COPA syndrome for so long.
Oh, for sure. This discovery has given them like a real path forward, a potential cure. And it's given all of us a glimpse into a future where we might be able to use the power of our own genes to prevent and treat all sorts of diseases.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty incredible time to be alive.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We went from a family struggling with this rare disease to the possibility of a whole new approach to medicine. What's a one thing you hope people listening will take away from this?
That's a tough one. I guess I'd say it's that we're only just starting to understand how complex and how powerful the human genome is. And every new discovery opens up all these new possibilities for improving human health. The story of COPA syndrome and HAQ-STING, it's just one example of that.
Yeah, and it reminds us that even when things seem impossible, science and a little bit of luck can lead to these amazing discoveries. And who knows what's next? Maybe one day we'll look back at COPA syndrome as the case that started it all, that opened the door to a whole new wave of gene therapies.
Yeah, a wave that could potentially help millions of people.
That's a future worth fighting for. And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Health Headliner podcast by To Digital. Like and subscribe for more health news and breakthroughs. Stay healthy and informed. See you next time.